if our previous session was tracing the threads that stitch together India's material heritage, this one unravels the stories that bind its people. Communities are like patchwork quilts, prints, weaves, and embroideries that, when stitched together, tell a larger story. In this session, we explore how histories are made, quite literally, by communities. We are so grateful to all the speakers who are here for the panel. Let me just do a quick round of introductions. Sudeep Chakravarti is the author of several landmark and best-selling works of narrative nonfiction that span history, culture, conflict and conflict resolution, and the intersection of democracy and development. These include The Bengalis, A Portrait of a Community, Plaze, The Battle That Changed the Course of Indian History, Red Suns, Travels in Naxalite Country, Eastern Gate, War and Peace in Nagaland, Manipur and India's Far East, and his latest, Fallen City, A Double Murder, Political Insanity, and History's Descent from Grace, a socio-political study of the killings of Geeta and Sanjay Chopra by Billa and Ranga and the explosive aftermath. An extensively published columnist on South Asian affairs and security issues, Sudeep has nearly 4 decades of experience in media and worked with global and Indian organizations, including the Asian Wall Street Journal, where he began his career, and he subsequently held leadership positions at Sunday Magazine, India Today Magazine, India Today Group, and HT Media. Alongside, Sudeep is an educator who teaches university-level courses in a range of subjects, from South Asian affairs and conflict resolution to journalism and literature. He is also a marine conservationist. Sangeeta Barooah Pisharoty is a Delhi-based journalist and writer. Her journalistic interest lies in national issues in India's Northeast, the region she comes from. A winner of the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award for Feature Writing, she was the first woman to win the Parag Kumar Das Journalism Award, the highest recognition for stellar reporting on Assam. In 2019, she published her first book, Assam, The Accord, The Discord. The book received critical acclaim for its deep exploration of Assam's citizenship issue, which led to the controversial update process of the National Register of Citizens, or the NRC. Her book was cited several times by the Supreme Court bench in 2024 while upholding the validity of Clause GA of the Citizenship Act. In 2023, she published her second nonfiction, The Assamese, A Portrait of a Community, a first-of-a-kind collation in English of the history, culture, and identity of the people of Assam. Brought out by Aleph Book Company, the book has been widely appreciated both in Assam and out of it for filling a much-needed gap. Sangeeta's writings have been published in anthologies like Hope Behind Bars, Notes from Indian Prisons, and I Am One of You, Northeast India and the Struggle to Belong. She is currently writing her third solo nonfiction on her home state, Assam. Barry O'Brien is one of the country's leading quiz masters and has conducted live quizzes in India and overseas, as well as several on television and radio. He has taught at South Point High School in Kolkata and went on to play a key role as administrator and educator there. He conducts workshops and interactive sessions developed and designed by him on public speaking, personality development, and effective communication in English in the corporate and education spheres. A pioneering author of several textbooks, Barry O'Brien has authored New Find Out, the highest-selling general knowledge series of all time, Grammar with a Smile, one of the highest-selling grammar series for school, English Will, among other path-breaking titles. He has recently authored a work of narrative nonfiction, The Anglo-Indians, A Portrait of a Community. He is the force behind TTIS, or the Telegraph in Schools, a weekly newspaper that twice won the prestigious World Young Reader Prize awarded by the World Association of Newspapers. He has also inspired many youth initiatives like Bonding Beyond Borders, a student exchange program between the youth of India and Pakistan. He is the chairman of the East India Charitable Trust and was nominated to the West Bengal Legislative Assembly to represent the Anglo-Indian community from 2000 2010 to 2011. Mr. O'Brien has been the unanimously elected President-in-Chief of the All India Anglo-Indian Association. All this sits lightly on his head as he continues to be a simple, down-to-earth person who touches lives. Thank you so much. Welcome, all of you. Thank you so much for being here. The session will be moderated by Dr. Shweta Deshpande. Dr. Shweta Sinha Deshpande is Director and Associate Professor at the Symbiosis School for Liberal Arts, Symbiosis International University, Pune, where she also heads the Anthropology and Archaeology programs. A founding member of SSLA, she has been instrumental in shaping its vision, pedagogy, and international collaborations since its inception in 2011. She holds a PhD in archaeology, and her interdisciplinary research spans archaeology, anthropology, globalization, migration, education, and socio-cultural change. Her work has led her to conclude that the key to understanding current social issues is to recognize the often unrealized cultural baggage that people carry. Dr. Sinha Deshpande has authored several books and research titles. She is the founding president of the India Big History Association, a founding member of the Society for South Asia Archaeology. She has served on the executive committee of the Nehru Science Center, Mumbai. She is also on the editorial board of Migration Letters, an international journal. Committed to global education, she actively fosters international partnerships, joint research, and visiting faculty programs at SSLA, integrating global perspectives into liberal arts education and advancing intercultural dialogue. Thank you so much for being here, obviously. I invite Dr. Shweta to please felicitate our speakers.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for staying back for the rest of the SLF, post the big names just disappeared. I'm sure you've been enjoying the earlier sessions, and I think taking forward what was being discussed on craft, and then it moved on to having conversations on identity. I think this one is centrally located on conversations on identity, and I hope there is going to be, as my panelists have been hoping, fire on stage. So we've been having these conversations in the background, and we were some interesting ideas out here. So as Dr. Damini already mentioned, we have Sudeep, we have Sangeeta, and we have Barry. And all of them have written this amazing, I'm going to say treatise, because it encapsulates history, anthropology, cultural identity, music, food, language, everything into a 400 to 500 page text. In the day and age where community and community identities are being used to flare up all kinds of conversation, this is an interesting take. And the first one started with Sudeep in 2017. And since then, this is the third one with Sangeeta writing the one on the Assamese, and then then Barry's on second, and then Sangeeta is third. The latest book is on the Assamese. And interestingly, both of these are from Eastern India, and a lot of Barry's work, when he's talking about the Anglo-Indians, is also located in Eastern India and Calcutta. Now, when I think of community identities or community portraitures, they are very, very anthropological in nature in their origin. They are ethnographies. They are field studies which brings together a certain amount of personal research, first-hand engagement, primary data, historical, archival, literature, and a huge amount of personal reflection. And I think all three books are treatises from a personal perspective, critical, and I must say very daring, because all three of them have questioned these identities in many ways, but have also reinstated these identities. And I think that has been, for me, I loved reading them. I enjoyed every part of it. Each one of them have come up with very interesting concepts within it. And one of the things that they talk about is the idea of who am I, right? as in who's an Assamese, who's an Anglo-Indian, or who's a Bengali? And this is it's a question that cannot be summated. It does not have answers. I think what it does, in my understanding, and I'm going to request them to talk little more about that, is it opens dialogue. It opens a conversation as to how do you look at identities in this day and age, and what defines an identity. Is it geography? Is it history? Is it language? What is it? So without losing any more time, I think instead of me talking about their books, I'm going to request each of them to kind of quickly sum up what they think their books are all about. We will go with Sudeep, then with Barry, and then with Sangeeta. Right? Over to you.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Thank you for having us. It's very refreshing and pleasing to receive the felicitation before the start of the session, because God knows what you might think after the session. Maybe you wouldn't gift us at all and kick us off the stage. But having said that, and if I may sort of inject a tone of irreverence, it was very important. I mean, when you speak about who am I or who are we, it was very immediately necessary for me to do a bit of a stock taking. So I hope, and I'm sure it's the same for my colleagues here, one of the things that I had to do was to take a personal stock taking of who am I, because I began to sort of question my Bengaliness, or what I had assumed to be my Bengaliness. And I was born with it, and I grew up with it, and then I was distanced from it. And then when I started to write the Bengalis, I had to confront my own Bengaliness and all the assumptions and presumptions and arrogances and hubris and all manner of things that came with it. Some darn fine things as well. So I felt very self-congratulatory from time to time, but then one sort of dived deep into introspection and things, and then these little horrors began to open up. So it became important for me to do a few things, is basically go about acknowledging the good things about a Bengali or the Bengalis, but ensure at the same time that it wasn't a brochure for the Bengali people. It had to be a book about the Bengali people. It had to be a portrait of a community, and it had to be done with the warts from beginning to end. And therefore, it became very, very necessary to break through the mythology of the Bengali. And by that, I mean the assumption that the Bengali lives only in Calcutta or Kolkata, as it has come to be known now, and doesn't live anywhere else. Kolkata is the sun of all Bengaliness. That was one myth that had to be broken, because the Bengal and Bengalis are a lot more than Calcutta or Kolkata, and its sister city, if you will, Dhaka, because the Bangladeshis presume that the sun revolves around Dhaka. And these two cities, one, Dhaka came to be in 1610, Kolkata came to be in 1690. And while they compete for each other's Bengaliness being supreme, it is as if we forget that there are Bengalis elsewhere as well. That was one myth that needed to be broken. The second myth that needed to be broken, primary myth, was that all Bengalis are what we presumptuously call Bhadralok, or the gentle people, or the civilized people, without realizing that we must necessarily sort of give into a binary, which is the Chotolok, because if you don't have the lesser people, you don't have the greater people. I mean, it follows. So, and it is as if, you know, I mean, for heaven's sake, I mean, Bengal and Bengalis are a lot more than some, you know, the syrupy, sweet poetry, or, you know, the songs you hear when you ride the metro in Kolkata, which puts you to sleep so you miss your stop. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm still alive. I've written the book. I wrote the book 2017. It's been 7-8 years since, and I'm alive after having visited across India and Bangladesh, which I collectively call Bangla Sphere. So the third thing was to establish what exactly is the place that Bengalis inhabit. And like all good Indians, Bengalis inhabit every darn corner of the world. So one had to create sort of a psycho-geographical space, a sort of a demography. And the term that I came up with was Bangla sphere. So it began with an introspection, and then it sort of ended up with this creation of where the Bengalis live. So therefore, in Calcutta, in Dhaka, beyond, across Bengal, across Bangladesh, across India, across the world. And so these were the three primary pillars of creation. One was to break these two principal myths. And we'll talk about Rabindranath Tagore in a bit. And you just bring it on when I talk about Tagore. And let's sort of get a little fiery about it. We'll be as provocative as Bengalis are supposed to be. And I don't want to diss the Assamese on this one. They can get pretty fiery as well, I can tell you, which Sangeeta, my colleague, will get to. And Barry, of course, is the gentleman among us, but he can get pretty fiery as well. So we let it be. I'll leave it to my colleagues here, because these are preliminary thoughts that I wanted to present to you. I'm sure that Shweta will bring us back to some
Absolutely.
incendiary things, I
Oh,
hope.
yes.
Let's have some fun, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, first things first, I'm an Anglo-Indian Bhadralok, and I'm an Anglo-Indian Chotolok. Because Anglo-Indians, by nature, are sometimes Bhadralok, sometimes when there's too much in the glass, and when there's too little in the glass, people think we are Chotolok. The first reason for me writing the book is the publisher put his gun to my head. Yes. And said that basically I want to, sort of evolve into a novelist and a writer of fiction. After spending 35 years writing school books for a living, I don't look down on school books. It is my bread and butter, and much more than that. Thank God for it. But now, at this age, I want to evolve because I'm basically a storyteller, I think, and not a historian, and not a scholar like the two persons or the three persons over here. They are scholarly people. They may be journalists, and one is a professor. But so it was a huge challenge for me as a storyteller to tell a story of my community. And if Sudeepta says that he's still alive, and in Bengal, it's not easy for everybody to say, I'm still alive, sometimes. If you think that's difficult, imagine writing a book where there's so many Bengalis. It's the seventh most spoken language in the world, and there's Bengalis everywhere you go. I mean, I'll share a quick anecdote with you. We were taking the three girls before they flew, and we took them to Europe. There was this very long family holiday, which was sponsored by their dad and mom. And they said, Daddy, we are spending so much time in Italy and Spain. We're going to learn Italian and Spanish. So I'm really bad at learning languages. I only know three. All three I learned before I was 10. English, Bangla, and Hindi. And after that, every language I've tried to speak, I can't go beyond 10 words. But I was going to prove them wrong, and I said, well, I'm going to learn Italian. So we got off, on the flight, I learned or tried to learn 100 words of Italian. And when we got off over there was me saying, we're looking for water, we got water. And they said, Daddy, you're basically speaking English. You haven't learned any Italian. Anyway, they put me down, they'd learned some Italian. And we had to find a particular place, and there they were in their broken Italian, etc. I just walked across, and I saw a chap whose skin resembled mine, the color of his skin resembled mine, and I said, Dada, apni Bangladesh theke? So he said, Ami Bangladesh theke. I said, apni bolte parben ei jaygata kothay? Means, where's this place? And he showed me in 10 seconds where this place was. So what I'm trying to say is you get Bengalis everywhere. So it was easy for Sudeepta to write this book and not be recognized because there are so many Bengalis. Imagine being one of 4.5 lakhs. Apparently we are 4.5 lakhs Anglo-Indians, and doing the stupid thing of writing this book. I have, since I've written the book, I walk around, I'm not so heavy. I've got a bulletproof vest on here. That's what makes me look like I look, because my community, I thought, would just finish me off. But I'm really happy to tell you that as I started writing the book, I really got nervous about it. And because I wanted to be a fiction writer, hiding behind false names, etc. But here was I to write the real story. And David Davidar tells me, no, Barry, you'll manage it. So I started. If you ever want to write a book about your community, don't do it. Till you do it. As I started writing the book, everything inside me came out. And I emptied myself completely. My wife and I have 3 daughters till 2022. At the ripe old age of 58, I became a father again. That's how much this book means to me. And that's why it's really a bad copy of the book which I walk around with. It is me emptying myself of what I thought was right and wrong and in between about my community. I was at a huge advantage and a huge disadvantage. The huge advantage was that nothing, almost nothing, exists about my community. You can't say that about the Bengalis. Enough exists about them. How this man, sitting a little to my right, how he wrote it, only he knows, because of his great writing skills. But for me, it was just an empty canvas. I could just about write anything because it was unknown. Write anything means every single fact was unknown. There's no literature, or hardly any literature on the community. That made it very difficult at the same time, because where are your sources? What do you read? And I went on the internet, I said, I'll crack this in 3 months, and I cracked nothing. It was just some, age-old stories and archaic stuff and a few, sketchy facts. So I went down the oral history way, and it suited me fine. And if you're in a position like mine where you happen to be speaking to these people every day, for better or for worse, everybody said, you must have taken years to write this book. I said, well, I could have taken years, but it's taken me about 30, 35 years because of what I had learned about my community from the people I had spoken to. So it's a lot of oral history. So to sum up, what this book is all about is, number one, it is, I'm not saying it because I've written it, and I'm not saying it because SLF has published it. It is the only complete story of the Anglo-Indian community, without a doubt. If you can show me any book, because some books end in the 1960s, some books end before that. The community has evolved post-independence, and that's what this book is all about. Obviously, it has history from the time that Vasco da Gama came and all through the 17 and 1800s, the ups and the downs, etc. But I had this huge challenge of how a community has evolved, completely transformed post-independence. And I'll just take a minute to sum this up with one simple story. Till 1942, this community would sing God Save the King. Any event or any meeting, when it started or ended, they sang God Save the King. 1942. 6 years later, 1948, the Olympic Games, Leslie Claudius, Anglo-Indian, stands on the podium receiving his gold medal. And he says, I was choked and could not stop the tears when I heard the national anthem playing and the Tiranga going up. When Janaganamana played, he was moved to tears. How can a community, in a matter of a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, completely, just completely transform its thinking? So that was one. And secondly, over the years, till the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, Anglo-Indians hardly spoke an Indian language. Hardly. Now, 2 or 3 Indian languages is what most Anglo-Indians speak. I know an aunt of mine, Auntie Charmaine, she had never worn an Indian dress. She was living in India, 1970s, 1980s. But she had never worn a salwar kameez or a sari because those were Indian clothes. She lives in Australia now, and she wrote to my wife a few years ago, when I come next Christmas, could you please keep a ghagra choli for me? Because we are going to have a Diwali party where we're going to dance to Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. The umbilical cord of the Anglo-Indian today, back home, does not mean somewhere in Ireland or Scotland. The umbilical, which it was, the umbilical cord, and back home means India. And that's what I have written a lot about in this book.
Sangeeta. Thank you. A big hello to everyone. Can I be heard? Yeah? Okay, great. And what a coincidence, actually. You know, I'm going to talk about my community, the Assamese, outside of Assam, and at an auditorium where all I see is Assamese words, Assamese scripts. For a moment, I felt like telling my community people, "Arey, hum to mainstream ho gaye." Our biggest problem is mainstream nahi hai, okay? And mainstream nahi hai ka problem ye hai ki they don't know our stories. They don't know who we are. Hamare history to padhai bhi nahi jate. So it's a big thing, you know. We know about all of your history. You don't know ours. There's angst also. There is some sort of, you know, I don't know. It's like I have grown up within my community being told that, you know, we have suddenly become periphery. You know, we were not like that. So this pride of the community is there, but not getting recognized by New Delhi has always leading us to hit the streets, agitation karo, militancy karo, karte raho. And anything that we wanted, we always said that we had, we have oil, we have coal, we have tea, everything, but oil refinery karne ke liye, we have 3 now. All 3 refineries, 4 refineries, all 4 refineries were the product of agitation. Okay, street agitation. So this is where the community is. That has been post-1947. So then when Aleph got in touch with me and said, you have to write this book, I said yes, because simply for the reason that we don't have a book like that. So I said, if I can contribute that towards my community, great. So I'll do that. After a month, I went back to them. I said, nahi. No, not me. So let somebody else be. I understand when you are saying, पीछे से कोई भी लगा सकता है तुम्हारे को कि तुमने ये क्या लिखा हमारे बारे में. Okay? You represent us wrongly. This happens in my community, every northeastern community actually, you know, so every little corner is so strongly contested. Okay, because everybody's history is like a 360-degree view. It can be seen from different angles, you know. So that is there. And my edit problem was that this was after 2019, when the update process of the National Register of Citizens had happened. And Assamese were an angry lot at that time that the mainstream media, mainstream rest of India didn't understand us, misrepresented us politically, you know. And I was also part of the mainstream media, so some amount of that angst and the anger was also directed at me also at some point. So this was my edit problem. I said, okay, fine, after the NRC update process, how to represent the community, its identity, because our everything is, the entire NRC process, everything was, it came out of the identity, issue. So it was a big thing. Then gradually I said, fine, okay, let's plunge into it. Do it. But another issue I faced was like that, there is, it's perhaps the only community where the Ministry of Home Affairs had to form a committee to decide who is Assamese. ऑफिशियली सरकार बताएगा अब तुम्हारे को. मुझे नहीं लगता ऐसा कोई कम्युनिटी देश में है जहां सरकार, न्यू दिल्ली, ब्यूरोक्रेट्स, कमिटीज, या तो बताएगा. ठीक है. सो दैट इज मेड मी think that there's something we need to do. So the book starts in South Korea, in Seoul, because I happened to go to an agriculture museum there. I roamed around and I came back and sat down. I saw everything that is Assamese inside. So I said, who are we? Who am I? So it started from there. And of course, my other thing was that I am born in the community, but I'm married outside of the community. Okay, in the smaller communities across the Northeast, you will find if you are a woman married from outside, they really look at you. तुमने तो धोखा दिया है. है ना, तुम्हारे बच्चे Assamese बोलते हैं. तुमने घर में खाना क्या खाती हो? So, all of this is an issue. So, these are the things, that is the background, okay? So, then I realized that I also have to put the gendered lens there. If I am an Assamese, I am a woman, Assamese woman, and married outside the community. So, how is it that how am I, the community is looking at me as an Assamese? Whether I'm really purebred, what is it that I am, okay? So, and particularly when it is also going to the legal issue. Government is deciding who is this, who will this community be. So these are the added things that came to as challenges, in front of me when I decided to write the book. And the other thing was also that Assamese perhaps is the only community, Indian community, which has a tribal and a non-tribal section. I don't think any other community has that. So that also posed a kind of a challenge to me. What is it that how much of it is that how do I balance that out? So those are those things were woven into it. And plus, the last problem that I had was when I decided to finally write the book, COVID happened. So for a non-fiction book to be written without access to people, to libraries, to museums, God, it was like a terrible thing. I think being a journalist, there are certain, positives, I guess. So I dialed a few numbers. So many back doors opened. So I had some of the museums and some of the libraries all to myself to write this book also. So that kind of a situation was where I wrote the book. And lastly, this is something because थोड़ा सा बदमाशी भी करना है, तो उसमें ये कहना है कि I also the book is about our politics, our everything, our music, our craft, our food, our everything. It's also about our kings and queens, the kingdoms. So I have actually highlighted that our community, the Assamese, the origin of our community is actually not of the Dev, but of the Danav. So we are actually from the Danav community, Narakasuras, the Bhoma dynasty's descendants. So that takes us to it, that opens an entire new story about the whole Aryan story. So that is what, and so I needed to tell our young people that that is actually our origin. It's not that everything had come from the West. We took a lot from the East too. So Assam, actually, when you talk about the Assamese community, the larger Assamese community, it is also the place is also the gateway of South Asia, of Asia towards India. Thank you.
Thank you so much. To have dared to write about your own community, because I can completely understand and I've read them. You've been, as I said, very critical and very, very open about what was good, what was wrong, what was right. And it takes a lot of courage. So I completely understand the dare that you guys took forth to writing this book. I think I want to move to the next section where when I thought, we would take this session up, I started doing a little bit of research. And I realized that a similar trend had taken place in Europe in the 1960s, right? Where there was the first book that was written was about the Italians, then you have the French, and then the British. And then after that, I searched, and there was nothing. And interestingly, literally 60 years down the line, we are now talking about these diverse communities in India. And like I said, in a political situation where community identities are being questioned. So what I was trying to understand is that when I looked at the text, each of these texts, their entry point is history, right? And when we think of a community, we always think of a primordial identity of a community, that it's always existed. This is how it was meant to be. So for me, and when I read, you've talked about race, you've talked about genetics, you talk about migration, and like you said, you talk about the East Asian influence into India as Assam as a gateway. So how much does history play a role in defining a community based on your experience and your research of the text? Because most of these communities do not have a primordial identity, right? Each of them actually do. I mean, I know that Sudeep traces it back to the Puranas, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana. With Barry, it is more got to do with the migration going back to the early European descent population moving into India. And your conversation is more about East Asian populations moving towards further west. So I would want you to help us understand how much of history and what does history mean to you in this writing? Because history could be anything, right? So I want us to understand what does history mean to you when you were researching for these books.
Yeah. Me?
Sure. All three of you. You could start ahead.
Okay. So of course, my whole I'm a journalist, so my method of, inquiry is also very journalistic. It's not just the books, but it's also the, talking to people, the oral history. Our oral history is our history is essentially oral,
Absolutely.
When the Ahoms came in the 12th century, so they only started documenting, there's something called Burangi. So before that, it was only oral, our stories would be from one generation to other, going in music and things like that. So that's why I started this book about defining the Assamese community by translating a very famous song of Bhupen Hazarika, Mahabahu Brahmaputra. So it is about, he defined the entire community through that song. He said that, it was such an inclusive idea, definition of Assamese, I mean, today many things are being contested, but for us, because we have this oral history background, our whole, we give a lot of importance to our musicians. Even today, with the death of Zubeen Garg, what is happening in Assam now, So, and he's also a musician who had taken forward to the younger generation, to today's generation, what people like Bhupen Hazarika had said about the community, that discarding religion, all of those things. And so I have defined it like that. And history, of course, there's a lot of material in Assamese literature, in language, but not so much very little actually in English. So we had some old books, some early British bureaucrats who've written and stuff like that. Then just after independence, there was that movement that we have to write our own history. So that also happened a little bit. After that, not so much. I'll give you an example, like the anti-foreigner movement in Assam is what now the entire country is talking about, from where the NRC happened, whether it'll going to happen the rest of India, and all of those questions, infiltrator, Bangladeshi, all these words have actually come out of that region. But when I wrote my first book, Assam, the Accord, the Discord, it was published by Penguin, and that book was the first book that had come out in English after 40 years. So this is an idea I want to give you about the problem that we have in our communities have when it comes to having books in English. Okay, so that is also a lot of it. Because I come from within the community, it helped me to reach out to a lot of people, and everybody helped out. Okay, so that is what. So history is also not just about from the books or academics or anything. History is also in people's stories and all that. So all of that I have tried to put in. Yeah.
Would you like to take that forward, Sudeep?
Good
I know
morning.
you're itching.
Thank you. Just a quick intervention from a couple of things I overheard, and my journalistic mind kicked in. When you talk about the Assamese being a mix of tribal and non-tribal, we're in Maharashtra. Pretty much the same thing. And Bhai from Goa, pretty much the same thing. So there are parallels across the subcontinent, which is a happy parallel. And I'm sure more and more people will take it up. For the record, Anil Dhaarkar was commissioned to write the Maharashtrians, but he left us all too soon. So yeah, so that's. I hope that gets done quickly. As far as the historical aspect is concerned, I actually, before I explain about my entry through history into the Bengalis, I must give thanks to a gentleman called Luigi Barzini, who was an Italian journalist, editor, and writer, who actually wrote the Italians in Italian, and it was later translated into English, and that has been such an inspiration for me, because I read Luigi Barzini's work to get into the Bengalis, and the one thing that he got into, and when I was looking at an aspect of history, or the sweep of history, and here we as Bengalis think that we were immaculately conceived. We just sort of popped up one bright day, and we were fully formed, perfect individuals, the Bengalis. The Romans, or the Italians, had similar notions about themselves. So Mr. Barzini, or Signor Barzini, went and brought this historical sweep and actually dealt with puncturing holes with the civilization that begins with the Romans and presuming to civilize the entire world through Latin, and that was the kind of hubris that he was dealing with. And when he wrote the Italians, he wrote it after the Second World War, when you had the other arc, some sort of the proto-fascist, or the latter-day fascists, when Benito Mussolini's Italy was confronting the absolute horror of what Europe had come to confront. And Luigi Barzini took the Romans in his hand and wrote about his people and broke through every myth and every presumption that has actually sort of assumed that it has delivered the entire world, from language to art to aesthetics, right? And even got the Greeks out of the way while doing so. So I took great inspiration from Mr. Barzini's work, and it gave me courage to deal with the Bengalis. So I must pay homage to Luigi Barzini as I talk about my own people. When I, therefore, went into writing the Bengalis, I absorbed that courage, that I hope what was courage, that I learned from the Italians. And it gave me the extra wherewithal to confront my people and our histories in every possible way without fear or favor, and that this cannot be underscored enough. So therefore, when I talked about the immaculate conception of the Bengalis just popping up one fine day as perfectly created creatures, we are far from that. And I'll just sort of lay out a few things. We are greatly civilized, or we think we are greatly civilized. We're also one of the greatest butchers in the world. We've killed millions of our own through partition. And on account of partition, not once, but twice. 1905 was the first partition, great amount of violence after that, 1947, and we mustn't forget the other partition that the Bengalis suffered, which is Bangladesh breaking away from Pakistan. 3 bloody partitions. We've butchered our own people for the sake of civilization or a civilizational intent. So that is something that I had to keep in mind. The other aspect was to also, like, how far do you go to trace a people? Because, I mean, as we know, we're all a mongrel people. I mean, there is no perfect, I mean, there is no race. Bengalis are a people. Bengalis are not a race. It was immediately important to establish that fact. And I called us a mongrel nation, a mongrel people, because the Bengalis derived from travels and trade and connectivity for millennia from across the world. In fact, I humorously put in an aspect from the time of Mahavir, 6th century BC, when there was a text where the Jain Munis came into Bengal, and that was a time when they were so uncivilized, and these are Bengalis we're talking about, my forebears, when they came up and the Jains would look at them and say, choo choo, and this is recorded history, you know, like saying, get away from us, I mean, you don't belong in us. And the Bengalis in turn sort of let loose the dogs on the Jain monks because they were sort of, so these were also the Bengalis. The Bengalis are also the people who are so caught up in the Bengaliness that we forget that Bengali derived from the language itself, for which to speak, read, and write in Bengalis have also paid a blood price, numbering in millions, over and over again. Lastly, ending with Bangladesh. But I think we need to, so another point of history, because language is so elemental to the Bengali, that I had to trace that aspect. So history brought me into a fact where, you know, we talk about the Pal dynasty, which took it from Prakrit through Proto-Bengali, and the Sens came in. But we forget that the Muslim rulers of Bengal were also the people who contributed to proliferating the language, and they were patrons of Bangla, the early Bangla that has evolved into the kind of Bangla that we speak today, or the Bengali. So all kinds of these aspects of history had to come in, and these let me come into the discussion of, to enter into the discussion as to where we came from, who we are, what are our identity markers, whether it's culture or language, or whether it's food or what we wear, or how we think, or how we presume to think, or what we have sort of taken upon ourselves as being the mantle of the Bengali, which is basically we are a jewel in our own crown, as I like to say. And you know, there are many, many aspects of this, and it was very important also to acknowledge the histories of people who are away from the sort of the stereotypical Bengali universe, which is essentially what we think is Kolkata or Calcutta, or what we think is Dhaka. Also, my last point before I give it over to Barry, is that it was also important to come into the one aspect of history which is contentious now, and so all the more reason I should mention it. One of the things I encountered is that I was going from Kolkata to Dhaka because I was traveling all over to sort of revisit my roots, if you will, and sort of get to emotional and historical touch points. I remember this conversation in a Bhadralok household in Kolkata where we'd put away some single malt and some fine Bengali food. They pair very well, by the way. The PT ones more than the other ones. And then he said, where are you going tomorrow? I said, I'm going to Dhaka. And he said, but why would you bother? So I said, you know, just putting it out there, you know, 2/3 of the world's Bengalis live in Bangladesh. And the name of the country, Bangladesh, literally means the land of the Bengali people, or where Bangla is spoken, and the Bengali people have paid a blood sacrifice in 1971 to be able to read, write, and speak Bangla, and not Urdu. And God save Urdu. And so these were certain historical entry points, if you will, which were also, as it happened, they became entry points of identity, entry points of emotion, entry points of immense sacrifice and misunderstandings, which we're still, as Bengali people, trying to come to terms with. Because if you talk to somebody in Kolkata or a Bengali from West Bengal, they will deny that, and our greats, Sharat Chandra, for instance, wrote a novel called Srikanto. And I must say this but stress my point, and I will end it here. Sharat Chandra Chatterjee, Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay, one of our greats in Srikanto, he describes this scene where boys are playing in a Mufassil area, boys are playing football. And it's described beautifully. Shondha hoy hoy, it's getting to evening, it's Godhuli. Our football kheliteche, Bangali chelera are Musolmanera. So, the people playing football, the Bengali boys and the Musulmans. But the Musulmans are also Bengali, but not acknowledged as such. So I'll just leave you here with some of these aspects of our history and our assumptions.
For Barry, I think I wanted to change the question just a little bit, right? For both Sangeeta and for Sudeep, the idea of history is important, and there are some traces of identity where they come in. For the Anglo-Indian community, you actually had to create history because essentially there is enough and more information that it wasn't an immaculate conception, we were not always there. And then who is then an Anglo-Indian, and how do you then identify this whole community in a space where, in a country, in a nation amongst people, where mixed race communities are Malicha, right? And then how does patriarchy play a role in that? Because when you and I were having a conversation, you define Anglo-Indian as someone whose father had to be of European descent. What about if the woman is of a European descent? What happens to that community, that family? Something around that line to define what community really means.
You just took away the quizmaster's quiz question. I was going to throw a prize in, but I'll still do it if somebody answers. Before I get to that, I must acknowledge that when I was approached to write this book, I actually didn't know where to start. And Sudeep has just told us who he was influenced by. And I must publicly acknowledge, David Davidar did tell me, have a read of, or take a look at the Bengalis. That was the only book. It's always difficult to be the first guy. But when you're Neil Armstrong, then you're Neil Armstrong. So everybody follows that. And I read your book, Sudeep, and by golly, it inspired me and motivated me and gave me direction as much as the Italian writer gave you. I must acknowledge that. Now, and I want you to clap after this. How many of you think that you'd actually give it a shot sometime in your life, near future, far future, of writing non-fiction in a very interesting way? Anybody? 1, 2. Put your hand up. We're not going to ask you what the subject is, etc. So there are about 10 or 15 of you, maybe a little longer list. If you want an idea of how to make non-fiction interesting, read the Bengalis before you read my book even. Because here's a man who's taken that and made it a story where he actually takes you into his home and takes you into his father's head and heart. That's the way to write non-fiction in a fiction. Write it as if it's a story, and that really motivated and inspired me. I just needed to mention that. And before I come to yours, which is almost exactly what I was going to counter here, ours is the only community officially defined in the Constitution of India. Yeah? So if you open the Constitution of India, you will find an article which defines who an Anglo-Indian is. Not by Anglo-Indian kaun hai, but who is this bloke? Because it was done by the British. Yeah? They decided. Now, to come to your point, we actually know when the first Anglo-Indian was born. Yeah, I don't know the guy or the girl, and I don't know his father, but I can tell you it's anywhere between 9 and 10 months after Vasco da Gama landed up here. Yeah, what I'm basically trying to, yes, and that was going to be the first line of my book. And I'm such a non-scholarly, foolish writer that I actually wrote it innocently. And then I showed it to a friend of mine, who was actually a professor, and he loved the book, and he said, "Is that really what's going to be your first line?" I said, "Why?" And I said, "Okay." I mean, he didn't say no, and I went and changed it, but actually that's the truth. Now coming to your question. I will definitely give you an autographed copy, not this old one, a new one, a brand new one, not today, I don't have it. If you can tell me, anybody, without Googling, what is the exact definition of who is an Anglo-Indian? Quickly, anybody. You get a copy of the book. Yes, right behind this camera, right, yes, yeah. Yeah, about 10 rows behind the camera. In a quiz contest, you got to stand up and answer, so I can't see you, yes. Quickly, give him the mic.
Okay, I may be wrong, but
Hey, why are you guys so defensive? Just go for it, yeah?
Okay, an Anglo-Indian is someone who is outside India but decided to settle in India.
Okay. Sorry, you won't even get a page of the book. Yeah, nice try, but absolutely wrong. Yeah, the lady here, please. The lady here, quickly. Here, because my time is getting up. Yeah. You can stand up and speak without the mic. Here's the mic.
An individual with a British or an UK ancestry from the patriarchal line.
I mean, can you just say it in simple English? I'm a simple guy.
Someone who is in the father's lineage has British ancestry.
And
And then from the mother's line has Indian interest.
absolutely. You can't be too British. You can't be, a Scotsman and an Irish woman, and you live in India. Your child is not Anglo-Indian. Yeah? So what's your name? Ananya? Ananya, what do you study? Sociology? You're a Symbiosis student? No? But you still get it, don't worry. Which college are you from?
University of California.
We are really, really humbled. Thank you for coming all the way to attend this event. Can you just can you meet me after the show? Right, I will take your name down and I will give you, in time to come, a sign. Let's have a round of applause for her. That's the right answer. So number one is you should be, as you just heard, it's very patriarchal from your father's side, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, etc., etc. Somebody is of European descent, right? That's one. Secondly, your mother could be Indian or Anglo-Indian, obviously, yeah? But she can't be, like, say, from China, or she can't be from Europe, okay? That's second. Third is, obviously, then both Anglo-Indians can get married, and that's how the community evolved, actually. Third, you should be resident in India. My brother, we're three brothers. The first one you may have heard of. He's a bit busy these days. Yeah. He and I live in India. We're still Anglo-Indians. My middle brother, Andy, he lives in Australia and has lived for 30 years there. He's not technically an Anglo-Indian anymore because he doesn't live here. Right? So that is who an Anglo-Indian is. You need to be of European descent from your dad's side. Your mom has to be Anglo-Indian or Indian, and you have to be living a resident of India. Okay, so that's that. Now, coming to the definition part. So basically what was happening and ours is probably the only community, the British were such nice people, they decided to create this community. Can you believe it? And they didn't need test tubes. They just needed money incentives. The Portuguese were better people. I'm just being flippant about it. The Portuguese came with, for the spices, with a crucifix in their hand. And when the crucifix didn't work, then the dagger worked. Yeah? But basically, they were nice people who just came and, mixed around. And they obviously married many Indian women, and they were called Luso-Indians. So the Luso-Indians were the first Anglo-Indians, actually, right? With Portuguese, because Portugal is European descent, and Indian mothers, and that's how the community evolved. But then come along the British. And you know how matlabi the British are, always have been. And the British come along and they say, they don't want to do this. And then, the Portuguese were very Catholic, and the British were very Protestant. So they wanted to leave their own mark, etc., and they didn't know what to do. So they incentivized their British soldiers and others that if you marry a Luso-Indian woman or an Indian woman, but the child must be Catholic, then we will give you itna paisa. Literally. And they incentivized, and that's how the community was born. Why did they do it? They wanted future soldiers. They wanted people slightly less lighter skinned than them, but who spoke English, and who became gradually, slowly but surely over a century or two, became the middlemen to do their dirty work. So if you wanted to build the railways, the British say they built the railways, but actually, friends, it's the Anglo-Indians who built the railways, because the British guy didn't want to go into a malaria zone or a cholera zone. But he sent the Anglo-Indian son of his into, or nephew of his, over there. Now that definition continued. Is it right to have a definition like that in this day and age? What do you think? How many of you think it's absolutely wrong to have a definition like that in this day and age? What's happened to everybody who is heavily into gender? Or you think it's right? No. Well, obviously, most people think that it's not right. Because Anglo-Indianness today has everything to do with culture and nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with language and nothing to do with race. But unfortunately for us, the British left us somewhere dangling, and then comes along independence, and the Anglo-Indian goes to Sardar Patel, and goes to Nehru, and goes to Gandhiji, and they say, listen, some of us want to stay over here. Could you give us some representation? And foolishly, they accepted 2 seats in the Lok Sabha and 1 seat in various state representatives, as state assemblies. And the Anglo-Indian community was satisfied, foolishly, because that was not the way forward. And to end what I'm going to say now is, I think the best part, the favorite part, my favorite part of my book is the history that it could have been. Imagine if the Anglo-Indian community was given a state within India, like Goa or Sikkim. Yeah, I can tell you, we'd have lots of you coming to our schools over there. We'd have lots of you coming to dance over there. We would have location weddings or whatever that's called. What's it called? Destination weddings over there. Okay? We'd have music, we'd have theater, and we'd have lots of fun, and we'd have good education. Then the community would have been, you don't have to live there, you could live anywhere you want. But the community was more interested in the patriarchal definition, the constitutional definition, and basically we got stuck between a rock and a hard place. And lo and behold, what was expected to happen long ago, in 2020 January, out of the kindness of this government, we were kicked in a place where it hurts a lot. Exactly like the British had done, the community had been betrayed a second time, this time by the government of India, where they took away their seats overnight without explanation, without talking to us, without figuring out what the future should be. So, to end now, I would like to say that I think it's time to understand and realize that if the person is culturally Anglo-Indian, is linguistically Anglo-Indian, feels Anglo-Indian, and either parent is Anglo-Indian. I hope this is not going on live on social media, is it? It is? Oh, okay. I mean, that was somebody else talking. That's my personal view. But as the leader of the community, and as, I have to accept the definition of the Constitution. So we have 3 daughters. The first one is married a Bengali. The third one looks like she's not marrying within our community. And another thing, as the leader of the community, I'm asked by Anglo-Indians, very, very concerned, old uncles who say, Barry, what are you doing about it? I said, what, uncle? They're all our girls are marrying out. Boys can marry out because the children will still be Anglo-Indian. but all our girls are marrying out. What will happen to our community? So I sip the drink. I drink Royal Stag, not any other whiskey. And while sipping my drink, I say, that'll be a mixed marriage. Yeah, mixed marriage. What the hell? I said, Uncle, if there was no mixed marriage, there wouldn't be you and me. So mixed marriage, incidentally for me, mixed marriage is the future of India. Everybody should marry somebody else, and then India would be a great country. Sorry for taking so long.
Thank you so much. I think the reason why I asked that question is because I really wanted to touch upon the idea of what is a community and when is it born, and what is it today. But I know I need a moment to ask just a couple of questions. If there are any questions, we missed out on the time. We started a little late, so can I have just 5 minutes? So any questions there?
So this is not so much a question as a sharing, especially with respect to Assam, because if we believe that history is a story of man's quest in search of his bread, so we have a lot of Assamese population in India, in Pune, especially where I live. Now, obviously, those migrating are in need of work, so they are the poorer people. And they've been here for 15, 20 odd years. What a fabulous micro community they have created here, They have assimilated with the Maharashtrians. I'm talking chiefly of the people who have become security guards, graduated to being trusted enough by shop owners to man shops. A couple of them have turned entrepreneurs, small-time entrepreneurs, but they're there, very smart, very sharp survival instincts, and speak Marathi like a pro. They have learned to do that, and yet they maintain their, connect with the community. If the two of them are ever together, they will always speak Ohmiya. But switch to Marathi in a trice if they meet somebody else. So that is something wonderful I find about them.
Yeah.
The second thing that I see about them is they're prepared to do any kind of work. You find them all over the place, and now just Northeast, Assamese, but Northeast, anyone from the Northeast, you will find them working in malls as the face of the shops in retail. So that
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is like an upward mobility from wherever they may have come. They may have come from a poorer place. And the third thing, very interestingly, I find is, at least the boys, they don't intermarry. They don't marry the local girls at all, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know about the girls so much, but the boys don't marry the local girls. And so that's how they live.
Yeah,
and they all cried for Zubin Garg.
Yes, absolutely. No, I quickly want to, this is a very good observation which I have mentioned in my book. This is a very interesting times that we are going through. Assam, whether it is Assam or the Northeast, we have been always a migrant attracting region. And now we are actually creating batches of migrants. And these migrants are just, as you said, were coming out of the state for very little money. Okay, and they also are still very rooted within the community. So that's why you were correct. My whole research has also shown that they don't intermarry. They just go back home. They just want to keep their culture going. Okay, so we also have a very small diaspora. Unlike the Bengalis and other, we're very small diaspora. So in coming times, perhaps these things will change. But you spot on. So that is. That whole migration thing, now we are seeing the completely different, very Bihar-like situation happening there. And it's also perhaps because it's one of the fallout of the anti-foreigner movement and all of that. Yeah.
Sudeep cannot stay without responding, I'm sorry, he will.
Madam, you might think me rude for what I'm about to say, but I mean well, the same way that you mean well, I'm sure. I must say here that one of the issues we have, which the academic world loves to call othering, which is a word I hate. I absolutely despise that word. I'm speaking next to an anthropologist. Bread and butter for her, but my apologies for that othering. Please don't cherish the Ahomya community or the community of the Assamese migrant in Pune and the facility to switch to Marathi in a trice. But please, please, please don't stereotype the Assamese people or the Kannada people or the Bengalis or the Manipuri or the Naga or the Tripuri or the Missing or the Mizo or the Bihari or the Uttar Pradeshi. The most trains run from Maharashtra to Uttar Pradesh. Yeah? But these are people like us. They're not just people who are doing menial work or the face of the community in the malls. They're the face of society because society deems it so. So it's a migratory response. My request to you and to everybody here is to please acknowledge that there are people like us everywhere, across all communities, the same way that Anglo-Indians shouldn't be stereotyped, Assamese people shouldn't be stereotyped, Bengalis or Maharashtrians for that matter. May I be so bold as to say it in Pune. There are stereotypes of the Maharashtrian people once you go outside Maharashtra. Let me assure you about that. So we must please be respectful of the identity and the existence of people across the spectrum and not assume and presume certain things. I wish you well, madam.
May I just add some about stereotypes about the Anglo-Indian community? Everybody stereotyped us as people who love to dance and drink and socialize and they don't work, etc. Obviously, much of it was true. And then, no, it was true. So now, please stereotype us, the new age Anglo-Indian of the last 3 or 4 decades has forgotten how to play sport. They don't even know how to dance properly. Most of them are teetotalers. How sad. And they are concentrating on education. They are competing, and there's no reservation. There were jobs reserved till the 1960s officially in India, and the community became crippled and dependent on those reservations. And today, there aren't any reservations, and my community is approaching its Everest moment because the youth of today, they want to educate themselves, they want to compete, they want to just be like everybody else. That's the stereotype of today.
Just want to add one more thing here to this. I also come from a region where when we are talking about stereotyping people from my region outside of Assam and in the rest of mainstream India, but we also stereotype people from in our region. So that should also stop. And one other thing, Barry, you were talking about, the definition of the Anglos in the Constitution itself. I thought I just need one more sentence to add to that, because what I was meaning to say was that the Assamese identity is still a very contested identity and where government is playing a role in it. So that is what I was trying to say. So I think perhaps that's the only community in India where there's a contestation happening and the government has a role in that. And the other thing about you talking about the tribal and the non-tribal bit, Assamese community stood out for me, this tribal, non-tribal bit, also because in our region, there is either you are tribal or you are non-tribal. Okay? In India also, when we look at this thing is a tribal or a non-tribal. So this is the community where I saw these two components were very, very strong. So that's what.
So just to take the last sentence on it, community identities are never going to die. Community identities will always lead to conversations, and if you want to carry forward those conversations, they're here. Please take them forward. And over to you.
Thank you so much. Such a lovely reminder, I think, that community is not just about who we are, but how we choose to remember. Yeah? And that perhaps the greatest histories are those that are told with involvement and not just evidence, like we just saw. Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking the panelists for such a deeply human exploration of identity and belonging. Thank you so much.